Orwell, in his essay, Why I Write, shares with us what prompted him to write and what motivates him as a writer. We can read this to learn about Orwell as a writer and an author. We can also read this essay, though, to learn about how writers think and how to read texts so that we can write stronger essays. I'm Jen. Welcome back to my channel 10 with Jen, where I talk about all things related to essays and academic writing. If you are new here, hello. And if you have been here before, welcome back. Today, I wanted to look a little bit at an essay written by George Orwell titled Why I Write. And I wanted to share a few thoughts on what I think it teaches us about how to read more critically, and maybe an insight or two about what it also teaches us about writing essays. So stick with me and let's work through this. So in terms of critical reading, I think there are 2 points that Orwell really hits home in his essay, Why I Write. And so you might be thinking off the bat, why is she sharing ideas about how to read from Orwell's essay, personal essay on Why I Write? The reason is that Orwell, in his essay, Why I Write, sees himself as belonging to writers, so like writers collectively. And so although he tells us his own personal story, he does see his story as having a lot of universality to other writers. And he's saying what prompted me to write is the same thing that prompts most writers. In fact, Orwell would say every good writer, I think, to write. So that's why I think we can really take this essay and look at it as a text that teaches us about the mindset of the writer. And when we understand the mindset of the writer and what a writer is trying to do, we know then what to look for in texts when we're reading, because we know what a writer is doing. The first lesson I think we can really take from Orwell's essay is that when we are reading a text, we have to be very aware and pay very close attention and look for cues and textual markers that tell us about the time the text was created in. Because for Orwell, he will tell us that you cannot extract a text from its historical moment. That the reason any text emerges is a result of what was happening in the time in which it was created. And I will give you some evidence for that. I'm going to share a quote with you from Orwell's essay. So Orwell writes, I give all this background info because I do not think one can assess a writer's motives without knowing something of his early development. His subject matter will be determined by the age he lives in. If he escapes from his early influences altogether, he will have killed his impulse to write. So the impulse to write for writers, according to Orwell, comes from his personal experience. It's something that his nature has thrust upon it, but it's deeply connected to the age in which he lives. And that's why he says, determined by the age he lives in. So to read a text and to extract or try to lift it out of the moment in which it was created is to not do the text its full justice. It's to cause the text to lose some of its meaning and its value. So the first thing we want to do when we are reading any text is to make sure we locate it in its historical moment, where it was written, what was happening socially when it was written, what was happening culturally when it was written, what was the political landscape like, what were other texts that were kind of popping up at around the same time that the author might have been familiar with or aware of and perhaps responding to or joining a conversation with, right? So historical context is very important when establishing the value of a text and trying to analyze it. We always want to be very aware of what was happening that would have spurred an author to share and want to share the message that is being shared in the text. The second idea that I think we can take away from Orwell's essay, Why I Write, that teaches us how to read, is that we absolutely have to know what the author's value is or position is on the topic that they're writing about. And it shouldn't be waffly. We shouldn't say, well, I think the author is sort of trying to look at this. We as readers should be able to identify pretty specifically what an author's position or ideas are about a certain topic, and we should make them known to us and have them be very present to us as we are reading. And I say this because Orwell writes in his essay, "The Spanish War and other events in 1936-37 turned the scale, and thereafter I knew where I stood." So Orwell is telling us writers don't write to figure out what they want to say. They don't write because they might have something to say. And they don't write because they want to just raise a bunch of questions. Writers write because they know where they stand. And Orwell will go on to say that my starting point is always a feeling of partisanship, a sense of injustice. I write it because there is some lie I want to expose, some fact to which I want to draw attention. And so the writer has an agenda. The author has an agenda. They're trying to expose a lie. They're trying to highlight or present, draw attention to, as Orwell says, a certain fact. So as readers, we want to have in mind, what is the author trying to draw attention to? What fact is it that this author wants us to be very aware of, and why? Or what lie is it that this author is trying to expose? Where did it come from? What are its origins? And what does the author think of it? So if we have those questions floating in our minds while we are reading texts, we're going to read more critically as well. Because as Orwell tells us, that's what writers do when they write. I will include the link to George Orwell's essay in the description below. I would love for you to read it. I think it's a fantastic essay. There's certainly a lot more we can pull out of it. I just wanted to highlight a couple of ideas that I think are really important in terms of improving our critical reading skills that Orwell shares with us in this essay. That wraps up this video on George Orwell's essay, Why I Write, and what it can teach us about how to read more critically. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to click subscribe. If you are looking for more resources on essay writing to help you, visit my website, townwithjen.com. I offer a thesis thinking guide to help you write thesis statements, a Make It Persuasive seminar that goes over critical reading skills and critical writing skills, and I also have a 7 steps to writing a strong essay in university guide that is pretty popular, so you might want to check that out too. All right, thanks a lot, guys. I will see you soon.